Good evening, everybody. Welcome into the Villanova Basketball Report. It's live here on Bob Long Sports. My name is Bob Long, and we have a very, very special group of guests here this evening. We have Kevin Long in the studio with us, as always. Kevin, good to see you, and it is Holy War Week officially.
Yeah, Bob, I'm excited to do this version of Bob Long Sports here with the St. Joe's representative. We're really excited to get down to this next hour of talking here.
Yes, the gentleman to our left here in the studio that is wearing the St. Joe's red with the Hawk proudly is Tony Morelli. He is of Radio 1851. He's a grad student at St. Joseph's University, still on the track team over there. And they do a tremendous job. We were connected by a mutual friend of ours, one Mr. Tom O'Kane, who was with the St. Joe's track program for a long time. So we appreciate Tom for putting us together, and we appreciate Tony coming on. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to go through the rivalry, the history, go through the starting five in terms of if you had to put the best five on the floor from any generation of both teams. And, of course, a little bit of bragging on both sides and trash talk about what's going to happen on Saturday, a tip-off at Finneran Pavilion between the two programs. Tony, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate you guys inviting me on to the show. It's going to be a good one for sure. I'm going to really illustrate why St. Joe's program was very close to Villanova's for many years until about 2012 when the other program started pulling away. But, there's got to be a voice for St. Joseph's at some point on this Villanova show. So I'm very excited. Glad you guys can bring me out here today.
We are men of the people, Tony. We're here to hear all sides. We also have a gentleman over in the Baltimore County area. Kevin McClernand is with us. Kevin, welcome back to the show. Great to have you. You're going to be our distinguished trivia question deliverer. So I hope you're ready with that, but also excited to hear your thoughts on the Cats and St. Joe's.
Oh, yeah. Ready to go. Trivia and all.
Always ready. So, again, the Villanova Basketball Report's live here on Bob Long Sports. Every Monday night, we go live at about 7 o'clock p.m. and talk about the Cats. The first thing we'll talk about is the Villanova Wildcats and their tough win against LaSalle University, a team that hasn't won a game this year, coached by Ashley Howard, former Villanova assistant as of just last year. Three guys that they expected to be in the starting lineup at the start of the year for LaSalle were not dressed and were not playing on Saturday. Didn't really affect that LaSalle output, however. Took Villanova right to the brink. They led by 12 at one point in the first half. Villanova really struggled defensively, gave up 42 points in about the first 16 minutes of action. Kevin Long, what did you see from the Palestra?
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. Missing three of their starters, an 0-7 team to start the year. It was really quite a disappointing win, even for Villanova in that game yesterday. But, some of the guys were getting meaningful minutes. I was a little encouraged by Joe Cremo playing a little more. It seems like Jay Wright's starting to figure out his rotations a little bit. Jermaine Samuels has started to find himself a seat on the bench, unfortunately. It looked like he was going to have a promising start to the year, but he has really seen his minutes reduced over the past couple games here. So I think Jay is really starting to find his rotation. Demir didn't play the minutes that he usually does. Sadiq Bey is getting good minutes every single game now, 30-plus minutes a game. So I think he's just starting to find it a little bit. And as these guys get accustomed to playing with each other a little bit more, I expect to see them play a little better.
Okay, Tony. So from the St. Joe's side, you see a LaSalle versus Villanova game, I should say. That game ended probably 15 minutes before your game started, yep. But a struggle for the Wildcats. So what do you take away from a game like that?
What I take away is I'm looking at the rosters right now, and LaSalle played you with a 7-man rotation and yet held on to a team that is the returning champions. I would be worried. Not too much, but a little bit, that a 7-man rotation. You had Pascal playing 40 minutes that night, too, to quell a struggling A-10 team from a struggling mid-major conference, I would say. But, the one takeaway is I wish that St. Joe's and Temple were up in the Palestra 15 minutes afterwards like it used to be in the good old days.
That's for sure.
But, win's a win. You can't complain about that.
But what we can agree about is your exact point about the Palestra, and wish that certainly you could have all the games in there. And we'll talk about that over the course of the show as well. But you guys had a big game yourself. Yep. Had a chance to dissect the film. You guys had a big lead on Temple in the first half. Gave it away in the second half. The three ball just wasn't dropping, and I thought they were probably a little more hoist-oriented shots rather than a little dribble drive, a kick to step into an open three. There was a lot less of that in the second half. For you, what do you take away from that?
I take away the fact that for the first 10 minutes of the second half, we scored 6 points or 8 points after leading with an 8-point lead. That was not a defensive issue at all because, Temple only scored 15 to maybe 16 points in that time span of 10 minutes. That's an offensive problem. And when Phil comes out and touts a roster that is veteran leadership and is going to shoot the three and score, it's disappointing to look at, especially when, as I've been saying on my show all year, we don't have a set offense. It seems a lot of high pick and roll, a lot of passing around the arc to break a 2-3 zone, which worked against West Virginia. The press and the 3-2 zone that's like infamous with West Virginia. But when the shots don't fall and you don't have a set play and your senior point guard goes, I think it was like 5 for 16 that night, it really shows that you got to have some set plays. And I don't think Phil has designed any. Struggle.
Yeah. So it'll be certainly an interesting week as you gather and prepare for a Villanova game on Saturday, which is our featured topic for today. It's time for the opening tip here on the Villanova Basketball Report. That topic today is solely the Holy War. The Holy War between Villanova and St. Joseph's, a tremendous rivalry, and we're excited for it here in the studio. We're going to start with Kevin McClernand on this one from Baltimore. Your initial thoughts on this game for this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, after these last games this weekend, it's going to be a lot closer than I thought. And, I mean, Villanova just did not look good against LaSalle, and I will not be surprised if St. Joe's comes out with a win. Okay.
Is that a Charlotte Hornets hat? By the way, I'm sorry that this is a little off topic, but what are you wearing there?
It is a Charlotte Hornets hat. That's correct. Yep.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see when the next time is that we go back to you for a comment. All right. Well, my thought on this one is that I think it can be a very close game. Obviously, LaSalle played Villanova in that way. This is a Villanova team that in so many ways is still evolving. 4 guys go to the NBA, and it's not an excuse for Ashley Howard and LaSalle holding Villanova in check and really exploiting them defensively. But just to put it as it is, Villanova's defense isn't ready yet. We've seen flashes. They looked very good defensively in the Advocare Invitational, specifically against Florida State when the 3-ball wasn't falling. But there are issues, and Villanova at times isn't even getting back defensively. And that's a concern for me as they take on a St. Joseph's team that you watch that Temple game, this team loves to create possessions and loves to get out on the run very, very quickly. At times, I would argue, and we'll get Tony's thought on this, that they take some ill-advised shots just by the fact that they're running up and down the floor, and whether it's Fresh Kimball or whoever it may be, that they're firing shots up early. So I think that's something that Villanova is going to have to watch out for against St. Joe's. How can their transition defense effectively counter St. Joe's ability to run? Tony, what do you think?
What I see is 2 players on St. Joe's. Charlie Brown, who's 8th or 9th in the NCAA in scoring this year, and Jared Bynum, who has the best assist-to-turnover ratio in all of the NCAA, and he's only a true freshman.
Yeah.
And so when you mention defense for Villanova, St. Joe's takes care of the ball. They're 8th in the country with regards to turnovers, like least amount of turnovers.
8 a game.
Yeah, so
yeah.
If you're not gonna get back on defense, if you're Villanova, St. Joe's is not gonna try to press the ball and throw a pass out of bounds because they're trying to push it too much. It's a calculated push. It's one that is not out of control. The shots might not be the best shots, but when it comes to if you bring a full court press against them, they can get that across the court no problem. And so it is going to be, can you get a hand in someone's face? Because that has clearly been the issue for St. Joe's. It's the streaky shooting when there's late arriving defenders, and that will be the key. If you can't get back, are you going to show a little effort, put a hand in someone's face, make sure that there's no just wide open threes? Because then Taylor Funk, a struggling power forward, might be able to get going, even though he went 3 for 12 last night. But he's much better than that. You cannot let him heat up if you're Villanova.
Yeah, you mentioned the 8 turnovers per game, and I found that very interesting. I say this half in jest, but I wonder if the reason they're not turning the ball over is because they're coming down the floor and hoisting shots very quickly.
It's definitely that.
Doesn't give them the chance to turn it over. But my key for Villanova, I'll go to Kevin on this one, my key is Villanova's ability to score. And this is not going to be rocket science, but hear me out on this one. In terms of defensively, they set up that three-quarters court press, a press that's not set up to actually elicit turnovers. If it happens, great. But truly it's to make the other team work and labor to get across midcourt and then set up the midcourt, the half-court offense, rather than any type of running type offense, get down the floor quickly. And then the team has to make a decision when they have 21, 17 seconds left on the shot clock before they ever really get into their offensive set. I think that's the key for Villanova, whether they can score and set up the three-quarters court press, but how often they'll be able to, even on a miss, at least try to have some semblance of that full court pressure to slow down this St. Joe's running attack.
Right, yeah, exactly. I mean, they're not going to be able to set that up unless they're able to score. And, I mean, whether or not it's all that effective in the first place is, up for debate. It's a discussion for another day. But, yeah, no, they definitely need to be able to score more. They need to take good shots. We've talked about it in our last show here, talking about Phil Booth and Eric Paschal even at times taking, not the best shots. And they're good players. They're the best players on this team. Eric Paschal has developed his game. I think Phil Booth has developed his shot as well. He's definitely struggling to start this year off, and the majority of the reason is because he's just taking bad shots. We've seen Phil play well. We've seen him play well with other guys around him. He was a true sophomore in the 2016 national championship. Mm-hmm. He had over 20 points in that game, so obviously he has the ability to do it. It's just whether or not he's in the right frame of mind, taking the right shots, and that's the difference for him. And obviously they need to get the other guys going. Cole Swider was maybe had 4 minutes in that game against LaSalle. Like we talked about last week, he should be one of their best shooters, and he's kind of gone missing over the past week here. So the Villanova really needs to get their shooters shooting a little bit and scoring better for sure. They really struggled at that end against LaSalle.
Once again, we're here on the Villanova Basketball Report. Bob Long, Kevin Long, we have Kevin McClernand in Baltimore, and Tony Morelli on with us of Tony's Takes Radio 1851 on St. Joseph's campus, and excited to have him in the studio with us. Tony, one topic I really wanted to get to with you was the offensive style of St. Joe's, and you touched on it a little bit in your opening comments, but for the folks that are Villanova fans that are watching our show and don't know a lot about the new look Hawks team, what is the offensive idea and theory behind how they go about executing?
It is what I call the Steph Curry effect, and it's what the Houston Rockets have done, to relate to those who might have watched the NBA and know what they're like. It's, a ball-dominant guard in Fresh Kimball, a veteran who sets a lot of high pick and rolls with Taylor Funk and Longpre, two sophomores, I believe, who are big men around 6'8", 6'9", can shoot. If it's a high pick and roll, they can slip out into a flat if they're playing a zone and shoot a good mid-range shot. And then there's Charlie Brown, who, if you are watching and you need to keep an eye on this guy, he is cutting the baseline all the time. They are finding him in between zones. If he's playing against man, he's quick. He can get off his guy with an off-ball screen. He hits the lane very well. Not as well as I would like from a small forward. I wish he would slash a little bit harder in the paint, especially driving the lane. But I think that his ability to shoot and shoot off the dribble is very strong. He's a star. I think not this year, but definitely next year will be a strong NBA candidate. And I can see him testing the NBA Combine this year without signing an agent, so he's still eligible. But the identity is run and gun, high pick and roll, and finding shooters that are placed along the arc. If things aren't looking good, they'll just swing the ball back and forth, and someone will get open. They'll make you play man-to-man with the shooting. That's pretty much it. Yeah,
St. Joe's didn't run that high ball screen as much against Temple as I expected from what I've seen in years past. Villanova's really struggled defensively against the high ball screen, even when they were winning national championships. And now you have a much less experienced group of guys, a guy in Demir Cosby Roundtree who's still having trouble guarding the outside. And I think that that's a way that St. Joe's could exploit Villanova in this weekend's matchup. The other thing I'm not sure of is how Villanova offensively is going to react when St. Joe's switches up the defenses. And you mentioned St. Joe's seeing zones versus man-to-man. What I think St. Joe's does very well is they have an affinity and they have an ability to very quickly change, even from possession to possession, zone, man-to-man, back to zone. And I worry, let's go Kevin McClernand on this one, about if the zone is being employed by St. Joe's and if Villanova gets, with especially a lot of young guys, a little too comfortable just firing over top of the zone.
Yeah, and we've seen that already this year. That, I mean, especially in the first game Villanova played. I mean, being that they are a new team together, losing all those 4 guys. That, I mean, they settle for a lot of long shots, and against the zone, I mean, they're going to struggle, I think, and settle for a lot of long shots. Phil Booth, especially, I think, is going to be taking a lot of 20, 25-footers in this game if they play zone.
Kevin McClernand down there in Baltimore. Excited to hear from him, as always, on our show here. Bob Long in studio along with Kevin Long and Tony Morelli. So it's been pretty tame thus far, gentlemen. I think I've been impressed by that. But, Tony, I know you're I've heard a couple of your shows, so I feel like you may have some interior thoughts deep down about Villanova. Anything you'd like to share and flesh out here as we conclude or get towards the end of our opening tip segment?
Yeah, I'll have your blood boiling a little bit with a couple of my ideas. Right. One is there was a point in time back in 2006 after the infamous run for St. Joe's and the number 1 overall seed, Jameer Nelson and Delonte West, where St. Joe's actually put a bid in to join the Big East, but Villanova denied them because they didn't want to share the market. And, you know, my question is, are you afraid of us? Are you afraid of the competition? I mean, it really hasn't been that close. Seton Hall and St. John's, they share the New York market. Philadelphia's the 4th largest media market in America. We could easily share the Philadelphia market. And I think that St. Joe's, out of all the A-10 teams, is the one that would best be suited for joining the Big East. We would be like Seton Hall. I mean, come on, you're not scared of Seton Hall. Except when they beat you that one year. That was important.
They actually have been tough. I tell you, they have been tough. My thought on that, Tony, is anytime that you have a team that wants to join a conference, you need to show that team is not only going to bring in enough revenue that is going to make it worthwhile, increase the revenue, you got to increase the relative revenue per school. So if each school, let's just say round numbers, is making $5 million a year off the conference television revenue, and there's 10 teams, so you're making $50 million. Can St. Joe's bring in $6 million additional through a new contract whenever that new contract negotiation comes up? Is that 11th team in this case into the Big East going to make that much of a difference, not just for Villanova, but for Seton Hall and for Providence and for Marquette and for DePaul? My answer to that is no. I mean, my answer is that I don't know the answer, but that there were attorneys and school administrators across all the schools within the conference, and those school presidents said, no, not at this time.
I don't even think, does Seton Hall bring in that much money for the conference? Or they're
an original member.
Yeah. Well, my thing is, I think we could.
DJ Carlissimo coached that team. I mean, Providence, what are they doing right now? They're actually improving, but that's back to the days of Pitino even. I mean, these programs, these Big East programs, have a ton of history. In order to bring somebody else in right now, I think that would take a lot. And no disrespect, but I think the next school would be, in terms of a team that would come in and share a market, would probably be University of Connecticut. Coming back to the Big East, they have that history within the Big East, and their football, they could find another place to play and join as a all sports member besides football. I think that would be first in the Big East, in all honesty.
Especially with Hurley. I think he's going to do a good job over at UConn.
Yeah.
They're a program to watch for sure. My only rebuttal is I think the amount of national televised games we're playing this year has increased. We're playing around 10 or 11. Mm-hmm. So that's the only upside I could bring to this conversation if we're going to talk dollars and cents is we are getting national recognition. We are a team that has put players in the NBA and can draw with a little bit of star. I think Charlie Brown would be a star if he was on a couple more national games. I mean, he just plays electric. It's the small forward position. Wings are exciting to watch. That's the only thing I can draw. We'd have to have a consistent team like we have this year and not underperform, which we're clearly doing right now.
Yeah. I mean, it would be that the networks, that's another very interesting thing besides St. Joe's and Villanova and all the teams that are in the Big East. Just generally, what's the future of television broadcast rights? Is it going to remain on the cable networks? Is that going to be the extent of it? Or is there a conference that's at the forefront and goes with the digital media only presence? I don't know when that would be, which conference that would be. Probably wouldn't be a major conference. Perhaps that's something that would make sense for something like the A10.
Yeah.
If there's a fledgling network that's really starting to build itself, needs some programming, maybe a conference like the A10 could take a chance and a network on them, vice versa. And really to have that digital only presence, I think that'll reshape the entire television formatting, programming, and contract market. So
yeah.
It's a very interesting discussion. Okay, that's a good one. Anything else? We want to give you the floor here.
I'll give you one more before we end this segment, I guess, is the Palestra. You've mentioned it earlier.
Yep.
Villanova was the first one to break away from the tradition, and now no one in the Big Five plays every game there. LaSalle used up a home game to play at the Palestra, something that I like. We're playing, St. Joe's personally is playing University of Loyola Chicago at the Palestra, which is going to be a very exciting game. It's one of the most storied franchises, and not me on my show, but my co-host personally has said that when he goes to Villanova games at the Wells Fargo Center, sometimes the upper level isn't full all the way.
That's true.
And so it's
20,000 people in that venue. It's tough to fill.
And then why build, that arena on the campus too? Then if you're going to play all your games at the Wells Fargo, why invest that money in like a home arena like the Pavilion? Is my question. If
Kevin Long, you want that? I mean, they don't play every game at the Well. They only did that during the construction.
Okay, so will they be playing more games at the Pavilion this year for sure?
Well, more so than last year, but there's still, I believe they have 6 games at the Wells Fargo. So, I mean, 20,000 seat stadium, obviously difficult to fill. 6,500 seats at the Pavilion. Just gives them a little more opportunity to make additional revenue by going to the Wells Fargo. Obviously, they have to share some of that, but by bringing in some additional ticket sales at the Wells Fargo, I think it makes sense. But I think there's a point to that. You're playing 6 games at the Wells Fargo. Why invest all that money in the Pavilion? Why not say, now we're playing all of our games at the Pavilion? We just put in $50+ million into our new stadium here. We're playing every single game here. It's our state-of-the-art stadium. This is what we're proud of. So I think there's some legitimacy to, why are we not playing every single game at the Pavilion at this point?
Yeah, well, Tony, you've hit a little bit of a nerve because I understand that there were things in the Radnor permit scene that it was very difficult for Villanova to get their way in terms of additional seating. If they could have built, in a ideal universe, a 9,000 to 10,000 seat on-campus arena, I think they could and should have played every single game there. I always said there's nothing wrong with a tough ticket every once in a while. And that just builds the intrigue. It makes people want to go there. If there's the best game in the country, but there's 150,000 seats, that's not going to have the same atmosphere. People are going to be able to go on the day of, buy tickets. I just love that ambiance of, oh, you got a ticket for the game? Oh, man, how did you get that type of thing?
And I think the great thing about college basketball is when you go to all these storied, arenas, you're right on the court with most of these stadiums. Even if they're larger, like the 8,000, 9,000, you're very close to the players, more so than if you're playing at the Wells Fargo. You're a little bit more removed. It's like it's like the Lakers. They have the showtime. It's the floor is highlighted and everyone's kind of set back and the lights are dark and everything. Hagan Arena is small, no doubt about it, but you're on top of the players. It's a lot of fun, and I think. Yep. The only reason why I have an issue with the no playing games at the Palestra anymore was the fact that you guys were playing at Wells Fargo. You were working 3 stadiums at once in theory, and I understood why you got rid of the Palestra. But I think I would be more understanding if you had just played all your games at home when you had said that home court advantage was important to you. Not And I know there's Big East implications with being at Wells Fargo with the Fox business deal, and it's easier to film from there. But from a small school like mid-major like me, it's a little insulting sometimes.
You do know the Temple also plays some games at the Wells Fargo Center.
And they have a brand new stadium too. That's huge.
Relatively, yeah. Galea Core Center. Yeah. The only thing I need to just nudge to make sure I know what you're saying, because I know a lot of people around the Big Five have this opinion about Villanova, quote unquote, broke up the Big Five when Rolly Massimino stopped playing the Big Five games at the Palestra. He brought them home for the revenue impacts. So do you, Tony Morelli, and the St. Joe's community fault Villanova for that in general?
100%.
Okay.
There's no doubt in my mind.
Can I offer a counter to that?
Sure.
Let me ask you this. Villanova never exists.
Okay.
Drexel is the other team in the Big Five in this world. Are you telling me that without Villanova and without Rolly Massimino, all 5 of those teams would still be playing games at the Palestra, would be giving up home gate revenue in this era of college basketball where dollars and cents count? You're talking about moving from the A-10 to the Big East. If that were to happen for St. Joe's, a big part of that would be a financial component. Dollars and cents matter. Facilities matter. It helps recruiting. You're telling me over the next 30 years, not one of those 5 programs would have made the same decision Rolly Massimino did?
Have you ever seen Tom Golo Arena?
I have.
Okay, yeah, there you go. The Palestra is much nicer than what LaSalle even has at their
Correct.
their
And-
program, and so I'm just thinking that's a school that would not break it up. I think the only one
They'd
that
still make more money by having a game at Tom Gola than giving up
'cause you
part
don't
of
have
the
to pay
day.
it to Penn.
Yeah.
I still and then you go to recruiting, right? I think the Palestra is a recruiting tool. It's one of the storied franchises, and I know kids are into the Instagram hype videos about they don't know about history as much, but there is history and it does matter to people. I think people would be very interested. I think the fact that St. Joe's just plays Penn once a year at the Palestra is a draw for some of these people because you have all the alumni coming out to those games. Even when it's a Penn away game, St. Joe's alumni will buy up the Palestra because it's just such a pool, and the boosters matter.
It's it's the best venue in college basketball, maybe basketball period. But just to lock you down here, the answer is yes. In that theoretical situation, 30 years go by, the whole college basketball landscape changes. Not one of those 5 teams would have ever chosen to do it as it currently stands right now. St. Joe's played Temple at Hagen yesterday. So nobody else would have made that decision in 30 years if Rolly Massimino didn't start it?
It's trust. If you really think about it, it's like, do these teams trust each other to give up away games like that? Because once one school pulled out, you're right, everyone's like, okay, well now I'm not going to give up the advantage of home court. But I like to think so. I have good intentions with people. We're positive people at St. Joseph's. We're not cynics. I would say. We look at the bright side of life. We're humble. Some would say.
Absolutely. That's great stuff. Kevin Long, Kevin McClernand, any long-standing thoughts, deep-seated opinions about either Villanova or St. Joe's or the Big Five as a whole as we continue to uncover all the rocks here? Start with Kevin Long.
I guess my only deep-seated thought would be, to those who'd say that Villanova is not a true Philly school.
Oh, boy, here we go. Oh, my God. We don't have that long.
Oh, I know. I'm going to try to wrap this up quickly if I can. They play all last year they played all their home games at the Wells Fargo Center. There's banners all around the city after they won their national titles. Obviously, the city of Philadelphia is very proud of Villanova. They're a Philly school, in my opinion. I won't ask Tony's opinion because this will probably extend the show beyond our allotted hour here. But I just wanted to say my piece about Villanova being considered one of the Philly schools.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. The City Line Avenue is quite the line of demarcation for the St. Joe's folks there that puts them just a couple steps into Philadelphia and helps their argument. Yeah. Absolutely. Kevin McClernand?
Well, they might not be cynics over at St. Joe's, but Tony, you're just lying to yourself if you think they would all be playing the games there still. 30 years are going by. I think Temple would have been the one that would jump though in that 30 years. I think they would have been the first one.
So he agrees with me on that one at least. I also said Temple would have probably been the other school that did it, especially with the American Conference.
Yeah. No, I think you're both right. I think Temple maybe would have started it.
Yeah.
But then, again, you just keep peeling the onion. I think if there was no Villanova and no Temple, it would have been somebody else. And if you peel it all the way down...
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I would disagree. I think the LaSalle and St. Joe's are so, there's such smaller schools and tradition really matters when you only have basketball and we don't have national titles. We only have Final Four appearances, unfortunately. But those matter.
LaSalle does, by the way.
They have a national
1954.
title.
Yeah.
You guys were tied with LaSalle for many years until 2012, as my parents always remind me.
16, yeah.
They were LaSalle grads, so they were all big Tom Gola fans. But I can't say that about St. Joe's pulling out. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to indict my school like that.
Not on
I'll
camera.
just blame Temple.
Not
That's
on
what I'm gonna
camera. Great start to this one here, guys. Tony, I appreciate your willingness to really get into the deep topics. I had a great time. There's nothing like a good debate between two Philadelphia basketball schools. We'll be right back on the other side. This is Villanova Basketball Report live on Bob Long Sports. We have our whiteboard segment coming up. Dueling markers, dueling teams. We'll go through it all in terms of what we're looking for on Saturday afternoon. Stay right here.
Ford is Mayfair's neighborhood Ford store.
Nobody knows your neighborhood like Dunphy Ford.
Nearly 40 years.
Right here on Frankfurt Avenue.
Generation after generation, our neighbors continue to be our customers. We have access to the cars and trucks you want with financing you need.
Dunphy Ford is Northeast Philly's first choice for America's #1 brand. 7700 Frankfurt Avenue in Mayfair. Online at www.dunphyford.com.
Come experience the Dunphy difference. You'll be glad you did.
What does your character look like? Does it bounce back after each setback? Does it stand out by standing up? Does it make good on good intentions? Character is invisible until it's not. Only through action will the world know what it's made of, what you're made of. Find out how you can strengthen the character of your community alongside empowered veterans and families of the fallen at travismanion.org.
I would say that LaSalle is dynamic. Prepared. Active. Diverse. Brotherhood. Family.
It's time for V's and O's here on the Villanova Basketball Report. Bob Long representing Villanova. Tony Morelli of Radio 1851, St. Joseph's University Student Radio, a grad student on with us here tonight, member of the track team, put together in contact by Tom O'Kane, so we appreciate that once again, and having a great show here so far. We're going to go to the whiteboard now and discuss some of the keys for both teams, how St. Joe's is going to come out offensively, how Villanova is going to react, and vice versa. So, guess first, we're going to let Tony do his thing here. What do you got?
Okay, so in an ideal world for me, I wish that St. Joe's was running the Princeton offense, a lot of motion. I like the way that we have shooters and we could really drive to the lane and stuff like that, but we don't have that situation currently. We have a high pick and roll. So usually this is Taylor Funk right here at the top of the key. Not the top of the key, at the top of the arc. And then you get Fresh right here, Kimball, point guard for the team. Usually have Charlie Brown down here, cutting the baseline, looking for open when they do for the pick and roll. Usually hits this way, hits to the lane. You get Charlie cutting. There's always a pass right here. Easy dunk, easy layup. If that doesn't work, Charlie always can escape up here There's someone over here, Charlie standing here. Usually, so this would say Taylor Funk, power forward. Say Longpree's here, or Bynum, the other guard, is right here. You can swing it around if Charlie's not open after the cut and Kimball's gone underneath the basket. So Kimball would continue underneath the basket like this. Charlie's up here now because the cut didn't work. Getting him the ball. Villanova's still here. I don't know if they would say they're running a zone. For instance, they'd have a player here and here. They would swing it around to try to get that open man. 3 guys against 2. That would be usually standing here if it was a 2-3 zone. If it was a 3-3 zone, you could swing it again and around. And Longpree could shift down here, or Funk could shift down here. And then you'd have Charlie, Longpree, Bynum, and Funk with Kimball underneath the basket. You could escape down here. That's usually what the offense looks like. The high pick and roll, the easy cut underneath the basket. And if Charlie swung it out again, you could reset with the pick and roll. Now he's cutting back down the baseline again, looking for the open dunk or layup. He's a great finisher, 6'7", great length. And that's usually how we're generating offense, especially with the star player in Charlie Brown.
Okay, so Villanova defensively, it's very interesting that you brought up the zone concept because Villanova very rarely will go to a zone, but there are times last year when they were a little short on the bench and they had to go with Dylan Painter, a big man down low, they would almost always go to a 2-3 zone. But that's about it. 2016 is another time I thought about where Villanova went back to the zone and they ran it atrociously in a non-conference game against University of Virginia. And we were thinking, why are they doing this? But Jay said, we're going to need it eventually. And they had to run it against Buddy Hield in Oklahoma in the Final Four. They weren't ready in December. They ended up being ready in early April. But I'm going to break this down as if Villanova's running the man-to-man defense, which I assume they're doing. So this is Kimball, right?
Yep.
He's going to be guarded by, so let's see, you said the screen's coming about here, right?
Yeah.
So here's Colin Gillespie. And Colin Gillespie is going to be screened off. Your big is here. This is going to be Demir Cosby Roundtree. And the way Villanova plays their offense is that they are a quick switch team. And they count on their big men to guard whoever it is that is coming off the screen. Big guy guarding a guard or vice versa. So Colin Gillespie has found itself, as your guy will dive to the cup, Gillespie has to get there as well, and he'll try to front him. Now, that doesn't always work particularly well, but you'll have a guy like Sadiq Bey back here that if there is an over-the-top pass that's attempted on the roll, he can be there to come in and make that deflection. Of course, having a guy in the corner is a nice option for you, but the thing that I'm concerned about is Demir Cosby Roundtree and his ability, not just on the high pick and roll, but just generally speaking, what I have seen from St. Joe's this year is that their bigs will run the outside and will be out here on the perimeter. Demir Cosby Roundtree is not ready to guard that quite yet. He's not what Omari Spellman was from an athletic ability standpoint. And so that's a part of why Villanova has struggled a little bit defensively. And so you picked out something that I dissected week after week after week last year, even as they were winning games, as this is going to bite them at some point. Fortunately for them, it didn't, because they had an absolutely unbelievable offensive team. And defensively, they worked so hard, and I think they got good enough at guarding the high pick and roll last year. So I think Villanova's going to have trouble, but it's going to be down to Demir Cosby Roundtree and what he's able to do in terms of whether Villanova's going to be able to defend this or not. But I do think that you should look for a lot of switching, and Demir Cosby Roundtree, at the very least, hedging for as long as he can and then trying to recover. But I think that's an issue because you have the eyes of Kimball, the eyes of Bynum, guys that are really good guards, that if they get hedged on and there's a double out there, Demir Cosby Roundtree, they're not going to let him get back because that hard cut, they're going to get the ball to him before they can react.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's the fact that Bynum could be waiting up here when they swing the ball around. If it doesn't work, you kick it back out. If they're able to cover that the pick and roll, is Bynum could just go back and attack right away. You're all of a sudden setting up another pick and roll almost instantly because you have, as you said, the two power forwards streaking around here. Well, they can easily come for help. Bynum setting up again. Kimball's scattered across the arc if it has to. And another player who I haven't mentioned, Pierre Francesco. He is a guy, power forward. He will actually sometimes run the pick and roll with another power forward. You have two big men running the pick and roll now, and you have your guard and two guards, Bynum and Kimball, and Charlie spread throughout the court. Those are our three strongest shooters outside of Funk. And
now, how does that work and why? I mean, the idea behind a pick and roll is to get mismatches, and if you're running two bigs, it feels like an easier switch than if it's a guard and a big.
Yeah, I totally agree. But the fact that I think Pierre is pretty quick off the ball, and that's what gives the advantage. You have you might be switching guards, but it's just getting a little more space, especially if they're pressing up in a man-to-man situation. Gains a little space with the new guy. Pierre can pull up from here, just like Kimball can, off a pick and roll, and he just has good decision-making skills. They might not be looking for the advantage when it comes to size, but they just trust him more with the ball in his hand sometimes to free up the guards to shoot. That's more important than the IQ of or the mismatch that might be created. It's the fact that we can find guards who are better shooters out on the perimeter.
Interesting. Okay, so there's the first one.
Yep.
Satisfied with that breakdown?
Yeah,
okay.
I thought it was pretty accurate of what we're going to be seeing from St. Joe's on the offensive side.
Okay, all right. We can start by erasing that one and figuring out what's next here. All right, so let's look at Villanova. I know that the high pick and roll isn't particularly complex, we'll say. Villanova's offense is not very complex at all. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but it's about getting athletes in space and letting them do their own thing. So I'm going to highlight Eric Paschal. And for people that have watched this show, Pascal's a guy that we talk about a lot because he is just so versatile. And you don't really need to write plays for him. He's a guy that can either set a high ball screen up here and kick out for three. He can hit that three. He can also fake this pick and roll here, roll to the cup, and then all of a sudden he's a freight train coming down the lane and nobody can stop him. Or when he has the ball in his hands, Eric Paschal is at his best when he's driving not to the baseline but to the middle of the floor. Paschal is a bull. He can get you, if you're not in good guarding position, he is going to take you for a ride. If you are in good guarding position, he's probably going to run through you and it's going to be an offensive foul. Just saying, that's the way it's been with Eric for a long time. But what he is so good at is getting in here and either finishing with a two-handed dunk. He can pull up right here and hit that mid-range, or what he also is, an unbelievable passer. And if there's somebody backdoor, he'll find them here. If there's somebody out here, if a defender is collapsing, he'll find Joe Cremo, Colin Gillespie, Sadiq Bey, baseline. Those are three really good shooters for Villanova. So the idea for Villanova, the way it has been in the past couple years, is to space the floor, find a guy that's going to penetrate, and then either get to the basket or kick it out to a wide-open three-point shooter. If you're Phil Booth is a guy that's taken on more of a Jalen Brunson role. So Phil, I'll say he's a guy that will pull up and take some ill-advised shots, but what he'll do is run the Jalen Brunson play, as I like to call it. There's a winger out here, let's call him Sadiq Bey, and then there's Phil Booth out here. Booth with the basketball. He'll dribble this way as if he's going to hand it off for Sadiq Bey, but then they're just going to keep going. And they're going to pass like traffic on an interstate. So now it's going to be replaced. Phil Booth is going to be over here. Sadiq Bey is going to be right here. And Joe Cremo maybe is going to be over there. And you're going to have Cole Swider right here, let's just say. Demir Cosby-Roundtree, let's just call him at the elbow. This is essentially a clear-out play, where Phil Booth, he's going to say, I'm bigger and stronger than the guard, and I'm a better back-to-the-basket guy than the guy that's defending me. So he's going to be right here, and he's going to now just start backing this guy down, and wait for a second guy to come on defense, find Bey, find Swider, whoever it might be, or just quite simply take that guy to the basket. So we'll say not controlled chaos or anarchy, but not the traditional play call in the half court that you're going to expect from a lot of different teams. It's get your athletes in space, give them some conceptual ideas, and then trust their ability to go out and execute. This year it hasn't been as smooth as last year, but I think with this type of athlete, this type of team, and this type of, we'll call it positionless basketball in many ways, it works for Villanova.
And let me now bring out St. Joe's defensive lineup, because I think this is a play that's going to give us the most issue, especially when Charlie Brown, CB, is here in the 2-3 zone. So say there's a guard here, whatever it means. And then there's, say, Funk over here. Right? Against Temple, we ran a 2-3 zone, and we had an 8-point lead when we were doing it. We were holding them down to points. We switched to man at the second half, and it was not good. partially because the offense wasn't getting into shape, but also we didn't hold Temple down as much either by giving up 16 points and only scoring 6 at that time. So there's a player that doesn't get a lot of minutes. He gets about 6 minutes a game. That is very important to me. Markel Lodge. He is 6'10". He jumps high jump on the track and field team, one of my teammates.
Nice.
And he is going to have to be the defensive help, and I get frustrated when Phil doesn't play this guy enough because we lack size. Taylor Funk, the power forward, is a little undersized when it comes to height, and so he can't play the center position to give help to Charlie Brown, who has early foul troubles usually in games. I believe it was against, I think it was West Virginia. He had 3 fouls in the first half because of his inability to play defense sometimes. He's just, I don't know what it is. He gets back down easily. He just can't keep guys in front of him, cut them off when they're hitting the lane. So I think Markel Lodge would be our only cure or help, at least, for this. We're just going to have to let you guys shoot from outside and hope that you miss. It's just the play it's going to be. We got to bring defensive help, and we got to be able to collapse. If this player comes around, Markel can come up in here. If they do a dribble handoff from a player. But if they kick it out, we have no answer. It's going to have to be a center helping out with this back down because Charlie Brown could be exposed very easily. It's a concern for me when I see you draw this play up.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you draw up the zone. I might have a slightly different opinion about that because I think that a zone defense is actually an effective counter to this. This I draw up on kind of a man-to-man situation. Like if you guys have your prongs out here and Bay comes up here and Booth switches here and starts backing down Charlie Brown, okay, is that actually a problem for you guys? Probably not. So the zone, if you guys run the zone, I think that opens up a whole new can of worms for Villanova. So now I think the key comes to Eric Pascal. Remember I talked about how he gets into the lane via the dribble drive. I still think that yeah, of course.
Real quick, I'll put K for Kimball. Okay, there you go.
I think that he can still get into the lane, but at that time against the zone, it's really difficult because everybody's hands are in there and everybody's collapsing. It's easy to turn the ball over trying to dribble drive into a zone. So I think what the key is going to be is Eric Pascal now starting down here, flashing up here, catching the ball in the middle of the zone, and then either taking one power dribble to the hole, which he can do if he's not picked up, or at that time forcing 2 defenders and finding somebody outside. Let's call it Joe Cremo, Phil Booth up here at the top, and Colin Gillespie will be on that side. So I think that's kind of the idea. Maybe Cole Swider here on the side is the idea is just to get the ball into the center of the zone, but through the lob pass, not through the dribble drive. And I think that's where Villanova can have problems. Colin Gillespie's gotten a little bit ahead of himself, turning the ball over from time to time, dribbling into spaces where he shouldn't be. So for me, it's about quick ball movement, eliciting some really good shots based on defenders having to collapse, and getting yourself out of the zone that way. The issue is I can see this. Boom, boom. Oh, okay, shot's not there. Comes back to Booth. Okay, maybe a skip pass to Swider here. All right, we're just going to shoot over the top of the zone. and whether it's Demir Cosby-Roundtree down here or Eric Pascal, them not getting a touch. That's where a zone gets really effective if a team isn't ready for it and they don't know exactly how to execute. I mean, if you get Eric Pascal here and Demir Cosby-Roundtree here, let's take Cole Swider off the floor and you have 2 bigs here. The entry pass comes in here. The entry pass comes in here, and now you pull this guy up, Demir Cosby-Roundtree on the back door. You find him there after your defender comes up to guard at the top of the key. Or if he doesn't, then Eric Pascal can dive right to the rim. That's the way I think Villanova can proceed offensively against the zone. But I'll be quite honest with you, Tony. That's a concern for me because I don't know if this young Villanova team is ready to take down the zone quite yet.
Yeah, and it's definitely been St. Joe's most successful defensive lineup. I believe when Markel Lodge is in there and you have a 6'10" guy who's cut, he looks like LeBron James. He's so muscular. And he can just, if he's smart, it's all about basketball IQ with him, and it's all about discipline with the guards. Because if you're swinging the ball around and these guys want to try to overreach and try to swipe the ball when it's being swung around, it's going to be an issue because now you're really open. You're just breaking the zone at that point. It's going to be guard discipline, and can this guy make sure he doesn't foul when there's going to be activity in there? And the help will come. He just can't be making mistakes, mental mistakes, hacking guys. Just let them shoot if it's going to be an inefficient mid-range shot, because that's what happens in the zone. You try to find the flats, you try to to find the openings, and they're pull-up jumpers from the mid-range, it's okay. Let them shoot it. They might miss. They tend to miss it more than you giving up free throws or layups. And what's more important is making sure you box out. Boxing out, this zone here.
You nailed it.
Right? Because
in the zone, it's so easy.
If you guys are swinging the ball and we're letting you shoot over the zone and you're not collapsing in on us, it's grabbing the rebound because these guys are just going to start streaking, and especially Charlie. Bynum will come down and Charlie will just come off the top side.
Well, the idea in a zone, right? I mean, let's just say they were in man-to-man, and so Brown is going to cover Cosby Roundtree, and Lodge is going to guard Eric Paschal, and Funk is going to guard, let's just say they're going high. They go with Swider, a big lineup, right? Lodge knows he needs to get Paschal. Brown knows to box out Demir Cosby Roundtree, and Funk knows that he needs to box out Cole Swider. Okay, well, what happens where this is how the play starts? Cosby Roundtree up here, Paschal Swider, and at the end of the play, Swider is down, maybe Swider's in this area, and Cosby Roundtree is in this area, and Paschal's over here. Well, you don't have a guy. In a zone defense, you don't have a guy. You have a space. And so when a shot goes up, you don't immediately know where your guy is. Put your hands on him, box him out. And that's why when you talk about zone defenses, one of the real bugaboos is giving up offensive rebounds. And Villanova has one of the better offensive rebounds in the Big East in Demir Cosby Roundtree. That's one advantage I would see for Villanova. But again, I really do fear that Villanova might not be ready to come in and commit to attacking the zone through the middle the way you need to.
Yeah, and a lineup I would like if that was going to happen. If rebounding became such an issue on the defensive end, you take this guy out here. You take Kimball out. This is crazy for the viewers out there.
Where is your scoring?
Line him up in the shooting guard.
All right.
And then let's say long pray. But if he can't get it done, you could put Pierre Francesco in there, and now you have 6'9", 6'9", 6'10". You have 6'7" here. He can handle the ball or play shooting guard. He can shoot very well, and you just trust Bynum because I like that assist to turnover ratio. Kimball's good, but against Taco Fall at UCF, he could not get in the paint against taller defenders. He was scared of the 7'4" monster Taco Falls is. So
same here, by the way.
So I kind of trust Bynum. He's an efficient scorer. He's a great passer, and I put Charlie in the shooting guard position and get size out there because if that's an issue,
still got to grab somebody. Even if you have the big guys out there in a zone, you got to find somebody to box out. But that's good stuff. Last thing I wanted to talk about, if you're good for me to erase this.
Erase the whole way.
Is I really think that Villanova, after a made bucket, we're going to go full now, is going to try to institute and implement the three-quarters court press. And they've done this for a long time. Perhaps it's Booth and Colin Gillespie. Or you could have, if you're going to put one guy up there, you could put Sadiq Bey all up in his zone. But let's just say you got the two guards there about midway up the floor. And back here you have Bey. And I keep going with Swider, but let's just say Cosby Roundtree is back here and Eric Paschal is here. The idea is not to cause turnovers. And that sounds crazy. They'll take turnovers all day long and twice on Sunday. But with the turnovers here, I think Villanova is more likely just trying to make things very difficult for a team. So as St. Joe's is trying to bring the ball up the floor, you're forced to pass over here, and then you force a pass back here, and then another pass over here, and now you're across half court. A running team like St. Joe's, Villanova is going to try to make them take 7-6 seconds off the clock before they get into the front court, and then you're back into your normal man-to-man set. But I would look a lot for this three-quarters court press.
When I see this, I think my lineup I just put on the court was the fact that Kimball and Bynum, I had substituted out Kimball for Charlie Brown, bigger lineup in case rebounding had become an issue. If I see this, I want Kimball in then because he's a little more athletic, he's a little quicker, and I know you're saying you're passing it around. I'm hoping maybe he could just run by guys. I mean, really, that's the only thing I could think of. He has the smart, just like Bynum, smart decision making, but I think he's a little more athletic and can get him, not cut guys off, but get around them a little bit and run up the court. Even if they're going to have a cutoff here, you can then bring Charlie Brown here, and that's your only hope of maybe pushing it. And The other thing is force bad shots, because you can't set this up if it's off of miss. You can only set it up if it's off of make. So if you play good defense, this won't be as much of an issue as it could be.
Fair enough. And that 8 turnovers a game, I'm not saying this is designed to force 25 turnovers a game like press Virginia. However, if it does cause a couple, it could get St. Joe's out of the game. I would expect to see a little bit of this from Villanova, but it's about I think it's a good time to stop unless you have any other thoughts.
We've covered everything pretty much.
Phil Martelli and Jay Wright will be watching this as they prepare for the games.
Hopefully, Phil. I love Phil. I can't say too many things about him. Let me interview him. So, just not a critique, but this is what Phil will probably draw up for sure. Defense is the most important thing for this team. It has been a struggle. We let up 90 points to most teams while scoring 92 a game. So, if you really want to win, you got to play good defense. And this right here, this whole trap and this press is what concerns me if we don't play good defense.
Mm-hmm. So you've been on the first V's and O's here. What'd you think? You have fun?
Very exciting. You turn on ESPN, you don't get this stuff. You get people talking about if LeBron James is the greatest player ever. No, you want the X's and O's. This is what people care about. This is why the internet media, like other outlets, are very popular. I love it.
Good stuff. That's our V's and O's here from our special Villanova Basketball Report with the St. Joe's Tony's Takes. Tony Morelli on with us. Stay with us, though. We're coming back with the top 5 players in the history of each program and some trivia and, of course, our picks for the game. So stay right with us. We'll be back on the other side here on Bob Long Sports.
Ford is Mayfair's neighborhood Ford store.
Nobody knows your neighborhood like Dunphy Ford.
Nearly 40 years.
Right here on Frankfurt Avenue.
Generation after generation, our neighbors continue to be our customers. We have access to the cars and trucks you want with financing you need.
Dunphy Ford is Northeast Philly's first choice for America's #1 brand. 7700 Frankfurt Avenue in Mayfair. Online at www.dumpyford.com.
Come experience the Dunphy difference. You'll be glad you did.
What does your character look like? Does it bounce back after each setback? Does it stand out by standing up? Does it make good on good intentions? Character is invisible until it's not. Only through action will the world know what it's made of, what you're made of. Find out how you can strengthen the character of your community alongside empowered veterans and families of the fallen at travismanion.org.
I would say that LaSalle is dynamic. Prepared. Active. Diverse. Brotherhood. Family.
Welcome back to the Villanova Basketball Report here on Bob Long Sports. Bob Long, Kevin Long. We have Tony Morelli here with us, Radio 1851, St. Joseph's University grad student and varsity track athlete. He runs Tony's Takes. And as you see on the whiteboard behind us, we're very happy to welcome him into our studio here. He was nice enough to welcome me onto his show last Thursday evening. And we've been talking about this show for a while, Tony. I think the first couple segments went really well. The little bit of the rivalry talk was good. The whiteboard discussion was really good. And now it's time to talk about the all-timers, the all-time teams for both St. Joe's and Villanova. We're going to let our guests start first. The top 5 all-time St. Joseph's University team, plus a 6th man, plus a head coach.
Very important.
Let's hear it.
So, number 1, we'll go from point guard to center for my list. Number 1's Jameer Nelson. Legend of the program, helped build the program, and hopefully future head coach of the program. National Player of the Year, A10 Player of the Year. When he was, throughout his career, averaged 21 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and a field goal percentage of 50%. Guy was so good, one of the best players in our history probably. NBA Finals appearance with Dwight Howard with the Orlando Magic back in 2009. He's just an overall skilled point guard. And, there are teams still today that are looking for Jameer Nelson to start for them as a journeyman. So he's a very important player in basketball for the Big Five and for the NBA, who has a lot of impact on teams still. Second is Delonte West. We all know what Delonte West is famous for, but I won't say it. Height is 6'4". He scored 19 points a game, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. Shot 51% from the field. Had issues after playing in college with drugs and alcohol, unfortunately, but was a talented player, was one of the most dynamic backcourts in all of college basketball. That team was ranked number 1 at the final of the end of the year. They made it to the Sweet 16. Both Delonte and Jameer are near and dear to my heart as players and very important to the history of our program. Next is DeAndre Bembry, recent graduate, 2016, plays for the Atlanta Hawks right now. Gets some good starting minutes, but in his tenure at St. Joe's, beat, I believe it was Cincinnati, made us to the second round and almost upset number 1 overall seed Oregon. He led the team with future teammate Isaiah Miles, who I'll mention later. Averaged 18 points a game, averaged 4 assists a game, was one of the better defenders, and that's what he was really known for. He could really guard a player, get a steal, fast break points, and was athletic, could jump out of the gym, and actually holds the record for the broad jump at St. Joseph's University. Next is Rodney Blake. He was 6'8", played from 1987 to 1988. Points was 18 points a game that year, 8 rebounds, led the nation in blocks, and shot 56% from the field. Pretty impressive. And then finally is Mike Bantam, 6'9". He would be my center. From 1972 to 1973, he scored 20 points a game, 13 rebounds, and was voted as an All-American in the NCAA. So of all those players, you have a National Player of the Year, 2 A10 Players of the Year, 1 player that led a whole entire category in college basketball, and an All-American. So, my 6th man, of course, Isaiah Miles, plays over in Turkey, I believe. Was a great 3-point shooter, was a great power forward, could really stretch the floor, hit some big shots in the tournament, and in the A10 tournament and the NCAA tournament, helped win and bring that A10 championship back in 2014 and 2016. So another vital player and deserving of a 6-man role. And then finally, for my coach, it's the very famous Dr. Jack Ramsay. Was a 1977 NBA. He won the 1977 NBA Finals with the Portland Trail Blazers. One of the great coaches, Final Four in his tenure at St. Joe's. Really put the program on the map, and led the way for other coaches like Jim Lynam, another famous coach, coached the Sixers, and Phil Martelli, an institution at St. Joe's. Dr. Jack Ramsay is what started it all for us, and so that's my starting 5 plus a 6-man and a coach.
Very good. Good job there, Tony. All right, well, it's time for the Villanova starting 5. We're going to go in order of position, just like Tony did, and there's a lot to choose from. I thought from obviously a lot of generations, just like Tony had. These 2 very historic programs go all the way back to the early 1900s. So let's get started here. For Villanova, the point guard. This was actually a tough one because there's Randy Foye in the mix, who was absolutely unbelievable, 2,000-point scorer. There was Scotty Reynolds in the mix, but I think you have to go with Jalen Brunson, a 2-time NCAA champion, a NCAA National Player of the Year, and quite simply, the doctor, the guy who just ran the show for this Villanova program for the last 2 years and was a young guy that played key minutes on the 2016 national championship team. Jalen, as decorated as they come at the college level, and this is a guy who left after 3 years and still had tremendous numbers at Villanova, got near that 2,000-point mark, an unbelievable assist-to-turnover ratio, and it's just tough to look past the NCAA Player of the Year, the Naismith Award winner, and a 2-time NCAA champion. At the shooting guard position, one of the 50 greatest NBA players of all time. That's Paul Arizin. He was also the NCAA Player of the Year in 1950. He was the scoring leader in the country and was an All-American, of course. A 10-time NBA All-Star and a 3-time first-team All-NBA. I'm not going to focus too much as I go through this list on what happened at the NBA level. Now, of course, that's a part of the discussion, but from a pure college perspective, I think it would be doing Paul Arizin a disservice by beginning with his NBA accolades, even though they truly are unbelievable. His play in college, he led the entire country in scoring, averaged about 22 points a game over his career at Villanova, a National Player of the Year. And Paul Arizin, absolutely unbelievable. He's our shooting guard, and you love to have him on the floor at any given time. The small forward is Kerry Kittles. Kittles, a first-team All-American, the Big East Player of the Year, the all-time leading scorer at Villanova University, 2,200-plus points. He had that 10-year NBA career with the New Jersey Nets, but he was a guy that when Villanova was starting to come back, so you're talking about the in-between Rollie Massimino and Jay Wright years, when Steve Lapis was there were certainly struggles. He won the Big East tournament with that Villanova team, and that's not something that they were able to do for a long time, really until the Big East changed back in 2013. Now they've won a couple after that point. But a Big East Player of the Year, as I mentioned, an All-American, and the program's leading scorer. You love to have a guy like Kerry Kittles on your team. Next, Ed Pinckney. Ed Pinckney is going to be the only guy on this list that wasn't an All-American. However, Ed Pinckney was a 2-time first-team All-Big East. He was the 85 most outstanding player in the NCAA tournament. And as you see on this picture here, Patrick Ewing is the guy that he was tasked with going up against, an unstoppable force, the mighty Hoyas of Georgetown, who Villanova took down in the 1985 national champion, the greatest upset in the history of college basketball, and it was Ed Pinckney, given about 40 pounds to Patrick Ewing and a couple inches, that was able to keep him in check. He was able to put some buckets in the basket where it didn't look like it was going to happen, earned the most outstanding player, and in many ways was a key force in pushing Villanova to the heights that they were as they got into the early 90s. There was a little bit of a step back, and then, of course, Jay Wright came after the fact. But Ed Pinckney, nothing short of a Villanova hero. And finally, the center, possibly the greatest player in Villanova basketball history, Howard Porter, a 3-time All-American. The 1971 NCAA Tournament Most Outstanding Player. This is for a team that did not win the national championship. This is for a guy, you see in this picture, who's going over top of Bill Walton and gave that John Wooden team fits. And for all the folks that talk about that Georgetown-Villanova game, that was the last year before the shot clock, and whether a Georgetown team that had the benefit of a shot clock would have won that game? Perhaps. But if you're saying that, then you're going to also take a look at that 1971 game where Howard Porter could not be stopped. John Wooden went to the four corners offense early in the second half because they realized they couldn't stop Howard Porter. And that's how they squeaked away with that 1971 NCAA championship game. Howard Porter, even with the other team throwing four corners at him, scored 25 points in that game. The most outstanding player awarded after that 1971 championship game. And then the sixth man, this was really tough. Josh Hart, a first-team All-American, the Julius Erving Award back in 2017 for the country's top small forward. The Senior Class Award, the top senior player in the country, a first-team All-American, as I mentioned, and the Big East Player of the Year. Josh Hart, a guy who won the Big East Sixth Man of the Year in just his sophomore year. Well, he's the sixth man on the all-time Villanova basketball team. And then the coach. This was very, very difficult. Three coaches that I think really had the shot to win this. Jay Wright, Jack Kraft, and Rollie Massimino. Rolly Massimino for a long time was the only guy to win a national championship at Villanova. Jack Kraft had a longer tenure and put Villanova on the map and took that 71 team to the Final Four. And then you have Jay Wright, a guy who's still in the midst of his career. The story is not completed with him yet, but he's won 2 national championships. He's put Villanova on the map. He's overseen a program that has remained constant in a time of the conference being anything but. He's maintained the program in a changing college landscape, a small Catholic program where you have other programs like the bigger North Carolinas of the world, Michigans, etc., with the benefit of more revenue coming from higher conference contract dollars, more money going to the basketball program, and without the help of football. In this changing landscape, it's nothing short of amazing what Jay Wright has done. The 2 national champions. He is the best coach in Villanova basketball history. And that's our top 5, plus a 6th man, and the coach Jay Wright. Jalen Brunson, Paul Arizin, Kerry Kittles, Ed Pinckney, Howard Porter, Josh Hart off the bench, Jay Wright in front of the bench. I'll go to war with those guys any day. All right, Kevin Long, thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great top 5, 6th man and coach. The other thing I will say is, your list didn't even include the, possibly the best NBA player to ever come out of Villanova in Kyle Lowry. Obviously, he left after 2 years. Didn't make as great of an impact on Villanova as he did at the NBA level here. So I agree with him not being on the top 5, but just another impressive guy that came out of Villanova. The other guy that I could potentially see on this list is Randy Foye. He brought this team up from where they were in the middle of the 90s and early 2000s. 2003 they weren't great, and by 2006 they were starting to make some runs and starting to recruit a little better, and he really brought this program up to a higher level. So he and his teammates Alan Ray and Curtis Sumter, those guys really did a nice job. Mike Nardi as well, who's still with the team. That class did a really nice job, but Randy Foye really stood out amongst those guys for me.
Yeah, nobody in the 2006 Final Four team, nobody from the 2009 Final Four team. Jalen Brunson was just a young pup on the 2016 National Championship team. You got to make some tough decisions. Scotty Reynolds, the second leading scorer in program history, brought them to their first Final Four since 1985, I should say. The 06 team did not go to the Final Four, but those guys really turned the program around. Kevin, anybody, K-Mac, that is, in Baltimore, any thoughts there?
I mean, I can't believe Mike Nardi is left off this list. It's just unbelievable. Is Jay Wright still in the hot seat for this team also? And Tony didn't want to mention it, but Delonte West, I mean, we all know he had an affair with LeBron James' mom. So he didn't want to say it, but I needed to say it. So those are my thoughts.
Wonderful. A Charlotte Hornets hat and then that comment. All right, we'll see if we go back to you. Thanks again, Kev. Appreciate that. Tony, what do you think about either list, both lists?
I just want to say, have you ever watched you watch a Sixers game and they hold up the Wendy's signs for you missed the free throw? I want to go and hold up a Delonte West sign when the Lakers come to town. I think that would be hysterical. It would be on the internet. It would blow up. I think that would be great. 2 things. So I had Joe Lenardi on my show in mid-October. For those who don't know, he works for ESPN, Mr. Bracketology himself. And he said what Jay Wright has done, quote, is nothing short of a miracle. And I agree. The fact that the things you listed were, it's not a football program. It's the small Catholic school without the big state funding. It's a testament to Jay Wright, and I think he does deserve to be the coach of your all-time 5 when you have brought two titles in the landscape of what the NCAA is now, especially when you have Power 5 conferences looking, and this is also something Joe Lenardi had mentioned, to pull away and create their own tournament. There is push for that, especially with the major networks. No one wants to see mid-majors unless it's the Cinderella story of Loyola Chicago. They think that those early games are trap games for programs that aren't ready to play. They believe that they are just superior because of the money that they have and that they can do it and they have this pull. And so I think Villanova is a testament and has shown that we need to keep all the schools involved. It's what makes the NCAA great. It's what makes college basketball great. It's not college football where we're arguing about 5 teams and the 5th guy's been left out. Everyone gets a shot. Every conference gets represented, and it's something that's great. And I think that's what Villanova has brought to college basketball for sure.
Yeah, it's good. It's good stuff. You mentioned teams from big conferences, maybe it being a trap game, not being ready to play. Hey, I have an idea. Come ready to play.
Exactly. I 100% agree.
You want to win a national championship? Come ready to play. you want to talk about these two teams and how they might match up? We talked, I know, in the break after the whiteboard about how we wanted to go about this after we dissected those two teams.
Right. So one correction for myself, Delonte West was an All-American, so I have 3 All-Americans on my starting lineup. It's not as everyone on yours was an All-American, though, correct?
Except for Pinckney.
Okay. So I have 3, you have 4 on your starting.
5.
Because of the six
Yeah.
man. Okay,
Yep.
I just didn't realize that. But, I mean, listening to those players, for me, it's so easy to, like, add in the NBA career afterwards, but you can't. It's the college, what has been done throughout college. It's close, I think, especially when you bring out the coaches. Dr. Jack Ramsay was able to do it at both levels, and just because he didn't win a national title doesn't mean that his ability to coach was any much worse. And I think that's the only part for me where I can make an argument that we might be a little more skilled at the coaching position is the only fact that he's done it at both levels. Final 4 appearance for St. Joe's, NBA Finals win for the Portland Trailblazers, and their only win since then. So other than that, I think the personnel probably favor you guys, except for the guard play. I think Jameer Nelson still has as National Player of the Year, and what he did as a undefeated team and beating Oklahoma State in the tournament is something that I don't think anyone else on Villanova did, because he really did lead that team. There was no one else on it besides Delonte.
The only thing I would say to that is I hear you, and that's clearly the strength of St. Joe's there. Yep. Our backcourt here, if you're Villanova, has 2 National Players of the Year. Yeah. Paul Arizin, Jalen Brunson, Naismith Player of the Year, Jalen Brunson, National Player of the Year for Arizin. I'm not saying they're better, but I think that you're not going to find many programs in general. Forget St. Joe's, Villanova. Not many programs in general that's going to have a backcourt on their top 5 that that has 2 number 1 guys nationally in any given year. So I think let's get your guys up one more time. I know we had them up there. So there's your top 5. Here's Villanova's top 5: Brunson, Arizin, Kittles, Pinckney. Yeah, and to your coaching point, I don't know if I'll agree about Ramsay being a better coach than Jay Wright, but I think that they're absolutely right there in the mix. And what I want to give you credit for is making the point about Ramsay not winning a national title and that not necessarily changing the narrative. I think that there are so many people out there with Jay Wright before 2016 that had this opinion of him when Villanova was struggling to get out of the second round. And it was NC State in a game where Villanova came out a little bit flat. And then it was UConn, a team that went and won the national championship, et cetera,
right,
as the games continued to go on. And there was this narrative out there that Kevin McClernand, Kevin Long, I mean, we were talking Villanova basketball for a long, long time. And I was defiant that doesn't define Jay Wright and that this team is good enough to win the national championship. I still believe that the team with Darren Hilliard that lost to NC State was a better team than the team that won in 2016. I think the 2018 team was the best team in Villanova history, but I think the 15 team was better than the 16 team. So to your point there about Ramsay, I think it also applies to Jay. If these 2 national championships were not in his hands right now, of course the narrative would be different, but it doesn't change the coach. The bounce of the basketball, if North Carolina goes to overtime and wins that game, I don't think that changes something.
Right.
So Kevin McClernand, I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why I kind of made the joke about Jay Wright still being on the hot seat. I mean, it felt like everybody was talking about he should be fired for so many years until he won that national championship. And, I mean, he had been to the Final Four with Scotty Reynolds and them. So, yeah, I think he 100% deserves to be the coach of the team. Like you said, the other 2 coaches, I mean, are definitely in the conversation, but I think Jay Wright's the right call.
All right, Kevin Long, any thoughts before we move on to?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's the beauty of the NCAA tournament and, why it can be so difficult for teams like Villanova, right? You play so well throughout the year. You play hard to earn a number 1 or number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, and that's really telling to what type of team you have. You've played over 30-plus games. You know what type of team you are. You've played a lot of different teams in a lot of different conferences, and the beauty of the March Madness is it's one and done. It's cutthroat. You got to show up every single night or you're done. You're going going home. So, unfortunately for Villanova, that came up a bunch of times in the second round. But I agree with you, Bob. That didn't necessarily change my opinion on Jay Wright. The program was still headed in the right direction. They were having great years every single season. And the fact that he's won a couple national championships definitely says a lot for his reputation moving forward. But, in my mind, he's always been a great coach, and I've always wanted to see him here at Villanova.
A great show thus far. Appreciate everybody joining us here on the Villanova Basketball Report. Bob Long, Kevin Long, Tony Morelli here in studio. Kevin McClernand is down in Baltimore via Skype. He's our bear, and I say that because now it's time for trivia. So rather than Bear on College Game Day giving everybody games to pick with the lines, we'll get to that at the end of the show. He has some trivia about St. Joseph's University and Villanova University, maybe about the rivalry if we're lucky, if he did his job well. And we're going to get his thoughts now. So, Kevin, it is time for you to quiz us. What do you got?
Well, I mean, it's obvious, for fans like you guys, to know the leading scorer all time for each team. But we'll start with Tony. Who's the second all-time leading scorer in St. Joe's history?
The second all-time leading scorer has to be someone that was there for 4 years. I'm going to go Mike Bantam. He averaged 21 points. I have a feeling that he's up there.
Langston Galloway.
And someone I wanted to add to my list, but I think Isaiah Miles is just a better player. Langston, man. A10 winner also. Yeah.
Solid play. He was great.
He plays well now for the NBA.
I don't know it as deeply as you do, but knowing, just thinking about the options, I think he's right there with Isaiah Miles as well. You could flip that either way.
Yeah, they were both dynamic players. I should have gotten that one. I forgot about Langston.
He finished 103 points behind Jameer Nelson all time.
Okay.
So pretty close. If they went further in the tournament, he could have passed them. So we'll go to Bob and Kev. Who's the second all-time leading scorer in Nova history?
Well, I think we said it already, or I did. Go for it.
Oh, you think you said it already?
I know that I said it.
Oh, okay. Well, now I don't feel as good about my guess because he wasn't on your list. I'll go with it anyways. I'll let you pick your person. I'm probably wrong. I'll go with Randy Foye.
Okay, no. I'll go with Scotty Reynolds.
Scotty Reynolds finished 21 points behind Kerry Kittles, so even one more game and he could have passed him.
Ah, man. Okay, good start, Kev.
We'll go back to St. Joe's. They've made one Final Four in their history. What year was it?
I want to say it's 1958.
1961.
Close.
You got guys on the same 58 team that were there in 61.
Yeah.
I'll give you it. It's within that band.
I'm not giving it to him.
All right. Well, you are the purveyor, so.
And so Villanova, what year was their first Final Four?
First Final Four. I want to say 1971.
1939. Kev?
1939 is correct, yes.
That was the second one, though.
That's close.
Jameer Nelson, Tony mentioned him. He is the highest drafted player in St. Joe's history, I believe. What pick was he drafted? And for extra points, what team?
Oh, I don't know if I know the team. I want to say he was picked 7th or 8th. So I know he was not first or like in the top 5. Team, what's it? I'm going to say, I don't know. Random team. Denver Nuggets. Why not? I don't know what team he was drafted to. I don't think it was Orlando, though.
That is phenomenal that you got that team correct. Because he was drafted by the Nuggets and traded to the Magic right away.
I had a feeling.
But it was 20th overall, so a little later than you thought.
That's surprising because Bembry was 23rd, so he was actually pretty close to changing that, which is surprising.
21st.
Oh, wow, he's even closer. Yeah, there you go.
I would have expected Nelson to be a little bit higher considering how great he was in college. But I guess that small stature maybe dropped him a little.
Yeah.
What year these are the finals questions, by the way. That was the last St. Joe's one I had. And what year did Villanova join the Big East?
I'll go with 1993.
No, I mean they were in when they won in '85.
Was it the Big East? Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's a bad guess.
We'll give you another guess.
Bad guess. Nah, I don't deserve another guess.
Boy, this is tough here, Kev. This is tough. Thinking back to Dave Gavitt and probably mid-70s sometime or late 70s. I'll go with 78.
You should have stuck with mid-70s, 75. 75 they joined the Big East.
Yeah, that's a solid question there, Kev.
And that's all I got for you guys.
Okay, wonderful. So it's time for Pick'em then. We'll end the show with this. And if there's any last-minute trash talk that K-Mac you have for Tony or Tony you have for us, now's the time. Let's start with Kevin McClernand. Villanova St. Joe's, and it's coming up this weekend. Who you got?
I have Villanova. Like I said, not as confident as I was before watching the LaSalle game. I think they still win it, though. Just overall, a more talented team, I think.
Tony.
I think this is going to be there's going to be a lot of scoring. The Hawk will never die, but I think it's 93-86. It's within 10 points, Villanova. I think there's going to be a lot of scoring. A lot.
Yeah, Tony, I agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot of scoring in this one. Just like Kevin, I felt better about this team last week coming off that tournament win. This week, not so much after that LaSalle win. That was really telling that this is going to be an up-and-down year for this team. I think they have enough to get it done over St. Joe's, but I could easily still see them losing this matchup.
Okay, so I got Villanova as well. For whatever reason, in all the trash talk we were talking about, we haven't mentioned that Villanova is on a 23-game Big Five winning streak. Kevin McClernand, I can't believe that one of your questions wasn't, what's the second longest streak? What's the longest streak not named Villanova in Big Five play or anything like that? But Villanova's 23-game streak is 9 more than Villanova had back in 2004 to 2007. Behind that, it's Penn with, I believe, 12. So Villanova...
I knew you would be looking up that, so why would I ask it?
Great point. Great point. Thanks for that. I think Villanova wins the game. I don't know what the line... I guess the line isn't going to be out yet. But I think that it's going to be a close line. The other thing that I think we need to keep in mind, gentlemen, is that the Villanova Wildcats, play Temple on Wednesday night, an 8:30 tip, and that's going to be really tough for Villanova. And I think they're going to have their hands full on a weeknight late game at the Finneran Pavilion, a place where they've lost 2 of 3 since it opened. And I don't know that that's really a relevant fact, but I do think that Villanova is going to struggle with a team in Temple that has a little bit of size and also has some shifty guards. You could say the same thing about St. Joseph's. Big thing for Villanova, can they get back defensively? Can they score enough to set up the three-quarters court press? Because Temple and St. Joe's are very similar in the way that they want to run the basketball down the floor, want to create additional possessions. And, the race to how many ever possessions you can get, I think, is, in these programs' mind, a blueprint for winning. So can Villanova maintain their ability on defense? It was not good enough against LaSalle. I think they win the game against St. Joe's, and I'll call it a 10-point game. Should be a good one, though, and we're certainly looking forward to it. Tony, any last thoughts? We just want to thank you for coming. It's been awesome.
Oh yeah, I really appreciate it. I think we covered a lot of subjects that are important to this matchup and the history of the tradition. To your point about Temple playing Villanova, St. Joe's has to play Princeton, not an illustrious program, but Princeton is favored, so I am very concerned going into this matchup for this week. So St. Joe's just got to be on the ball. They got to be focused. This is a team that clearly doesn't look to be focused, being 4-4 right now and losing games they shouldn't have, like William & Mary. But I think that outlook for this team is just one game at a time. And, that's about it. I really appreciate you guys bringing me on here today.
Absolutely. We mentioned, by the way, you say Princeton. Kerry Kittles is now a coach at Princeton. So you'll have some Villanova in the building as you get yourself ready for Saturday. Great stuff, guys. Kevin McClernand, thanks for being on. We appreciate it as always.
Oh, great time, guys. I mean, it should be a good game. Hopefully not. Hopefully Nova wins comfortably, but I think it'll be closer than we like it.
Kevin Long, thanks again for coming on. I hope this was a good time for you as well.
Thanks for having me on, as always, Bob.
And Tony, hopefully this is not the last time we do this. Let's stay in touch. Let's continue to talk through the conduits of our 2 shows, but also just generally. You're a good basketball mind, and it's been awesome having you on.
Yeah, it was a great pleasure, and same to you.
Awesome. That's Tony Morelli, our guest here on the Villanova Basketball Report. It's live on Bob Long Sports. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Bob Long Sports. And, of course, you can find the audio versions of all of these on SoundCloud as well. And until next time, enjoy the basketball, folks. We'll see you next Monday as we break down the first 3 games of Big 5 play and prepare for that last one against Penn. Have a great evening, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.